And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. We're starting things out looking at the sun here. It's a 48-hour SDO video in 131 angstroms, and we see a prominence coming out of that sunspot, which then collapses back onto the chromosphere. Sunspot 2765 has degraded a bit. It will be reclassified today, most likely to alpha class, as the trailing umbrae have mostly entirely evaporated. By the end of the video, they may be completely gone. And we did see a coronal mass ejection. It was the one that I was citing yesterday, and you can see at this moment we have this little anomaly there on stereo A. So here's the coronal mass ejection we watched build yesterday, and there's the moment of ejection. And we do see a halo on the LASCO C2 and C3, and it's because of that coronal mass ejection. And the Earth is in the other direction, so that's why it's showing up that way. It's almost the exact opposite as the direction of Earth from the Sun. And we are streaming live, by the way, so if you are viewing live, please leave us a comment. Next, looking at the Sun and HelioViewer, here's the magnetic fields. And here's the fade to 304 angstroms. It looks like there still is a little bit of plasma filament there on the southern portion, right in this area. And let's take another 48-hour SDO movie. It's 94 angstroms. And we do see some B-class flaring, some small solar flare activity happening there. Nothing major, and no major ejecta coming out at the moment. Let that play through a second time here. And let's take a close-up of the southern region. Here's the 304 angstroms view once again. And you see a great look at that prominence there. Fantastic view of that prominence. And we've got a custom 171 angstroms view as well. Here's that. Always a delight. And let's move on and look at some more data. KP index is down to 1, coming off of its lows of 0 about 9 hours ago. And the 10.7 centimeter radial flux has dropped back down to 71. By the way, we're only 11 days from the solstice. We'll be streaming live at the time of the solstice, starting out about a half hour before the moment of the solstice, which is at 5:43 p.m. on June 20th. And that's Eastern Daylight Time. So join us for that. We'll be featuring call-ins. If you want to call in, you can send us a phone call or a text at 610-936-9799. Next, looking at locations of objects in the solar system. There's where they are now. There's where they'll be in a week, approaching my favorite phase of the moon, the new moon. Now we're going to talk cosmology for a quick moment here in yet another cosmology segment. And we're starting out with some LOLZ, as Don Scott and this guy Gareth from the channel See the Pattern and Wal Thornhill talk about the fast and slow solar wind explained. They also talk about cosmic rays a little bit, and it's LOL worthy. Here's a clip.
On exploding or double layers as a source of cosmic rays, I believe. I'm not entirely sure.
He's definitely not entirely sure. And here's a little part of the section where they're talking about the fast and slow solar wind. It's hilarious. It's 27 minutes of them smiling and nodding at everything they say.
So it's a tremendously dense, tremendous high number of ions that do this.
By the way, the sun is not electric, stars aren't electric, and thank God for that, because they'd be way too unstable for you to be alive. Next, looking at cosmic quasars, it's a phys.org article talking about how they have flared out jets. So coming out of the z fields of these objects, we see these jets, which are quite parabolic at their origin, and then they flare out at the end, and it has to do with the slowing down of the plasma and probably the rotation of the quasar. Now, a quasar is a special type of active galactic nucleus, one which features this jet aiming right at you, which makes it very difficult to figure out how far away they are. If you want to read this one, it's on phys.org in the Astronomy and Space section. And part of the reason why that may happen would be because of the rotation of the condensed matter massive radio source that's sending it out. And so after the jets are straight for a while, then they eventually get flared out like a bell bottom, which is what they're talking about when it comes to the 1970s fashion trend. And here's another article on phys.org talking about cyclic fast radio bursts. So this wasn't discovered until about 2016. We thought they were one-off events. But this one here has a 157-day cyclicity. It's fast radio burst 121102. So it bursts for 90 days, followed by a silent period of 67 days for a full cycle of 157 days. So it's interesting. And keep in mind that originally astronomers thought it was because of a cataclysmic event such as an exploding star, and this has to do with their lack of tools in the cosmic toolbox. So when you've only got gravity and fusion inside of stars, well, that's an indication that perhaps you don't know all of the processes that are operating. At least they're starting to talk magnetic fields these days. So another interesting article here about the cyclic nature of cosmic radio bursts, fast radio bursts. Next, looking at a study of the sun's magnetic fields via its corona. So every time we have a solar eclipse, we can take radiography of the plasma in the corona, and it'll give us insights into how the magnetic fields are oriented, the potential field force lines. And you can see how different it is in 2001 versus 2002, and so on. Very, very different magnetic field force lines at different times of solar activity. So this one is from also from phys.org. So up here you can see the visible, and then down here you've got radio images, which are used to figure out where the potential field force lines are. And I'll just let the article scroll here for you. If you want to read it, feel free to pause the video. During times of minimum solar activity, the corona's fields emanated almost straight out of the sun near the equator and poles, while it came out at a variety of angles at mid-latitudes. During maximum, the magnetic field was far less organized and more radial. So something to consider, and we look at magnetic fields regularly on the channel. Next, let's talk about citizen science, another Zooniverse.org project. Citizen science discovered the closest brown dwarf ever seen. It's only 300 and some light years away. And this was discovered on diskdetective.org. So if you type in diskdetective.org, it'll take you to this site. It's one of the Zooniverse sites. And we've featured Zooniverse.org's Galaxy Zoo project and a couple other projects on the channel many times before. So check it out if you want to perhaps be the citizen scientist who discovers some brown dwarfs. We're trying to differentiate them from galaxies, and that helps calculate their size and distance, obviously, as the disk around a brown dwarf could be confused with a galaxy. And next, looking at in-the-sky.org to see a pileup. to see a pileup happening right now, as you've got Jupiter, the Moon, and Saturn all very close to each other in the sky and being trailed by Mars. So if you're up before sunrise, Venus will rise right around the time of sunrise as well. So you should have something to look at up there. And we see a couple B-class flares kicking off throughout the day today, June 9th. No significant proton events happening. And here's the real-time solar wind, which has had quite a roller coaster ride here. And we see it ramping down to 4.1 protons per cubic centimeter. And the solar wind speed ramping down as well, now about 400 kilometers a second as that coronal hole wind stream subsides. Phi angle is around 157 degrees. And let's move on to the geospace magnetosphere movies. There's what's going on in the magnetosphere. Nothing too exciting there. A couple small perturbations in the solar wind showing up there. Nothing to write home about, but we try to archive 4 hours of data every day on the channel. Next, looking at the geospace ground magnetic perturbations, and there you have those during this polar excursion. Were you aware that we have 2 north poles? Well, you're probably not a regular viewer if you weren't aware of that, so thanks for tuning in. Please don't forget to share our content on your social media. And don't forget to press like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Tell your friends, tell your foes, tell your science nerds, tell your science noobs. Next, the GOES magnetometer data. And you can see a pretty tight range here in the past 24 hours. Fairly low highs and fairly high lows, actually. And looking at the Gong 2 data, we are still solidly in the North Pole oriented current sheet, which is shown here in green. And we expect to remain there for a couple of days, as there's a sunspot south of the equator moving into the Earth-facing zone. Line of sight field plot shows slight distortions in the eastern portion of the B field, shown here in blue. Keep in mind the data is 1 hour and 35 minutes old and can change suddenly with no warning. Relativistic electrons are still at very low levels. There you see this ramping down since August. And there's a current electron flux. If we're going to see an increase to warning levels, we would expect it to happen in about 24 hours, again, as that coronal hole wind stream subsides. And I would expect to see some electrons. Here's a total electron content forecast. And everybody's GPSs should be working rather well. We did note some anomalies yesterday. If you want to see an anomalous version of this, watch yesterday's daily space weather video. And we see some anomalies once again over the Caribbean, more minor than we saw yesterday. And next we're going to look at the ionosphere. 6 hours of data from that, courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. So there's that. As we're now just looking at one layer of the atmosphere instead of the last frame, which was the entire air column. And it's looking a little bit on the discharged side at nighttime there, but nothing to really write home about once again. Let's bring up the latest image. That is from 7:30 UT. And it's actually looking a little discharged on the daytime side there. So there's that. Here's the earthquake rundown. And we don't see any quakes above a 6 magnitude. Let's scroll up the list and see what we see. A very deep quake at Fiji. It's a 4.9 magnitude, but at 527 kilometers depth. So no major earthquakes to report. Here's a Caribbean quake at depth at Dominica. It's 114 kilometers depth and a 4.0 magnitude. I think the largest of the past 24 is this 5.6 at Indonesia. Next, looking at volcanoes. Let's go down the list. Klyuchevskoye is back to erupting, producing a 20,000-foot flight level there. Dakono exploding. Flight level 6,000 there. And please don't pole vault the caldera at Revenador. It's exploding. And the top of the ash plume is 15,000 feet above sea level. And let's talk about this nonsense. How about the virus that just mysteriously vanishes? It just mysteriously vanishes because of a viral video showing police brutality. A horrible, horrible, horrifying video. Turns out WHO says asymptomatic COVID-19 carriers not very infectious. Gee, who could have guessed that? People who aren't sick, in other words, they're not coughing, and they're not sneezing, and they're not sick, aren't very good at spreading the disease. Yet another reason why it's completely inhumane to force healthy people to be locked down and to wear masks. An idiotic idea. Thanks, government. You're really earning those taxpayer dollars. Ron Paul's talking about it, how the narrative has failed. The amazing, vanishing coronavirus. Hey, look, it's Don Lemon. Let's play a clip from the Liberty Report. Shout out
Your
to
team
Ron
is
Paul.
exceptional.
And we'll just let their ad play, and I won't show it to you. And I'll just play you a little clip from Ron Paul's Liberty Report. Man, oh man, YouTube, what is up with your software? Jeez. If you saw what I was seeing right now, you'd wish you haven't. All right, let's cut back here. I'll be back to that in a minute. Oh, yes. You know what? I would say bear with me. Just go watch Ron Paul's Liberty Report. I'm not waiting any longer. You can forget it, YouTube. The narrative has failed. The incredible disappearing coronavirus. Just over a week ago, much of America faced jail if they dared break social distancing. Now tens of thousands gather to protest a police killing with impunity. You think it might be propaganda, folks? How about this one? As the protests rage in Chicago, Chicago saw the highest black-on-black murder rate in 60 years. I don't have a comment. Check out this rant. We've updated the insanity files at smAsho.com/forum. Quote, "Go ahead, save us the trouble of tearing you apart and effing kill yourselves." Did I stutter? I said, kill yourselves. And then a Seattle council member defends this insane rant by a guy standing behind her with a megaphone. If you want to read about that, head to smAsho.com/forum. And the insanity files are in the general science forum. I used to be a psychology major. And let's not advertise Fuji. Oh, jeez. All right, I apologize. I had some tabs open that I didn't want to have open there, folks. All right. We've got an update in the dream log in the free-for-all forum at smAsho.com. We've got a dream log featuring my dream about Lance Armstrong and Tyler Hamilton. If you want to read that, it's there. And we've got a Sharticle alert. Oh, yes, a Sharticle. As it's very rage-inspiring to read phys.org's Earth section because it's rife with Sharticles. And here's one. Countries must work together on carbon dioxide removal to avoid dangerous climate change. Yes, they're trying to scrub carbon dioxide out of the air. They're pumping it into the ground. And it's one of the dumbest ideas in the history of mankind. Almost as dumb as geoengineering and putting particles in the stratosphere on purpose to try to block sunlight. Great ideas, dudes. By the way, plants grow optimally at about 1,200 parts per million. We're currently at about 419 parts per million. And I don't know if you're aware, but carbon dioxide has nothing to do with the climate of the planet, except that it lags the climate by about 800 years. And that's because of cellular respiration. So tell your legislator to refuse to create any laws involving carbon sequestration, because it's an idiotic and mentally handicapped idea based on the idea that carbon makes the planet warmer, which it doesn't. And speaking of warmer, check out all the freeze warnings. See all those freeze warnings there out in the west? What about those frost advisories? You see those? We're less than 2 weeks from summertime, folks. It's the 9th of June. And we've got freeze warnings and, flooding up the Mississippi Valley also. You can find it all yourself at weather.gov. Next, we're going to look at the jet streams, which are all over the place once again. big anticyclone over the North Atlantic. As we look at flight level 25,000, extreme meridional jet stream flow is now the rule, not the exception. Here are the jets of the eastern world, and they are extremely disorganized, especially in the northern hemisphere once again. And next we'll check out windy.com's pressure maps. We'll let it advance into tomorrow via the GFS forecast. And here's where we expect to see things at 12 noon tomorrow. And next, looking at water vapor maps for Africa and Europe. Water vapor maps for the Far East and Oceania. Lightning maps, and we see a long string of lightning here at lightningmaps.org. A long string going all the way from Nebraska up through Minnesota. And once again, Fargo, there's thunder rolling in. As well as Detroit Lakes. Quite a lot of lightning activity there. And let's see where it's headed. Here's the U.S. Doppler radar map. And those storms are going to train, folks. You may continue to get hit by storm after storm here, as they seem to be moving in a northeasterly direction. And some significant snowfall happening in Colorado and Wyoming. It must be so hot down there that it's cold. Let's look at a water vapor map next. And here's a U.S. water vapor map. Some sudden evaporation up here, it looks like. And that's in South Dakota. And let's take a look at where those storms are located. Zoom in on that region. And there you have that. As that low pressure system moves nearly due north. And thanks, smAsh team. Please don't forget to share. Later today, we expect to make another. We're planning another episode of the Diamond Anvil, Too Hard to Smash. So don't forget to check that out. It'll probably be up around 4 p.m. Thanks to our subscribe stars and to our patrons. Patreon is the true source of funding for this content. And again, please share it on your social media. Tell your friends, tell your foes, tell your neutrals so everybody knows. And here's the umbra of Sunspot 2765. And we still do see some trailing umbrae there, but they look like they were shrinking to me. If they don't go away, it'll remain a beta class. If they do go away, it'll turn into an alpha class sunspot. And let's see how the fields look. Yeah, so if that second umbra, this one back here, the one in the farthest to the east, if that umbra goes away, that'll be instantly classified as an alpha class sunspot. Anyway, there's the colorized magnetogram. There's the full disk. Small plage in the northwest. And how about one more view, the 193 angstroms 48-hour video. And there you have that. And it's about that time to vanish. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, stare at the sun, don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. And welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. May that solar wind be at your back.